Yeah, it's logo.
There it is right there. All right.
Yes. So, good evening and welcome to Suffering in Silence with Evangelist Tia on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Love Bay family, we want you to remember that we're rising out of the ashes together. Our topic on tonight is the third gift. And we have with us our co-host, Jennifer Peterkin, host of The Human Experience. We have with us our co-host, Erin Mitchell. And our guest for the evening is J.D. McCabe. J.D. is the author of The Third Gift, and he is also a male survivor of domestic violence. Listeners, if you have any questions or comments for our guest or our co-host, you can email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com, or you can text 437-778-3299. And with that, I do, listeners, viewers, I feel like it's just been a minute. I just want to say thank you. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you, not just our listeners and viewers in Canada and the United States, but around the globe, Africa, Europe, Bahamas, Jamaica, the Philippines, Brazil, France, Russia, China, everywhere. We want to say thank you. We want to acknowledge you on tonight. I want to give a special shout out to one of my friends, Lady Green, Gigi. She's watching tonight. Gigi she is a nurse. She's going to be with us at some point. I'm trying to get her on a program, but she's going to come and she's going to share her expertise with us as well. But with that, I would ask Erin, would you go first and greeting our listeners and viewers on tonight?
Yes, thank you so much. It's great to be here. So good to be in this conversation that we have every Friday night on Love Bay Radio. This is Suffering in Silence. And again, the organization of Rising Out of the Ashes is something that I am a part of. And I am inspired by the group of people that we work together with, including the founder and director, Evangelist Tia, and my friend now and colleague, Jennifer Peterkin. So good to see you always. And it's great to be in a circle of really important conversations that need to happen around the issue of violence, domestic violence, and sexual violence, so that we can all rise out of the ashes together. And I think that that's what this is all about. So thanks for having me, Evangelist Tia, and look forward to hearing from you, JD.
I look forward to being part of it. So thank you.
Jen, would you greet our listeners on tonight?
Yes. Hello, Love Bay. So glad to be back on Suffering in Silence. If you are new to the program, I am one of the co-hosts. I am a survivor of domestic violence myself, and I do advocacy work on a regular basis with Evangelist Tia and Erin Mitchell as well. And I am also a part of Rise Out of the Ashes organization, where we aim to educate and advocate for victims and survivors of domestic violence. And yeah, so I have a really big heart for stories, and it's one of the reasons I love being on here. And I actually interviewed JD for my podcast, The Human Experience, which is about our stories that we live out every day and how they shape who we are. So if you want to follow along on that, you can visit my website, thehxpod.com.
Thank you so much. So listeners, before I share some resources, JD, I'm going to ask if you would just greet our listeners on this evening and let us know where your book is available.
No, excellent. Yeah, so it's an honor, it's a privilege, it's a pleasure to be here. I thank you for the platform to share my story. So JD McCabe, I now reside in the Charleston, South Carolina area. I'm a first-time author. The book is, as you've said, is titled The Third Gift. The subtitle is perfect, I think. It's My Dance with the Devil and Her Mother. And I didn't use that as a subtitle just to grab people's attention. I truly danced with the devil for at least 5 years that I was aware of. And so again, it's an honor. It's a privilege to be here. Anybody that's interested in getting a copy of the book, if they want signed copies, depending on where they're at and which country, I do sign copies for a flat fee of $25. They can just send me a Venmo at The Third Gift. Otherwise, it's available on Amazon, Walmart, Target, all your major online retailers. I also have an audiobook that I narrated from the closet of my home a couple of years ago. So that was an interesting experience. So, and I should say that any of the proceeds from the sale of the book are going to support several different nonprofits. One of them including a center called the Mercy Center for Women, for abused women, for women that have been in domestic violence situations, have nowhere to go with their kids, and I've become really close to the executive director. So I've done some collaborative efforts with them. So any proceeds I'm making from the book are going back and giving back to others. And I think last year I was blessed enough to contribute close to $10,000 through some of the proceeds of the book. And so that's one of the main reasons why I continue to promote it. And again, forever grateful to folks like yourselves that are willing to share such a broad platform with me to share my story. So I'm happy to be here.
That is awesome, JD. Thank you so much. So listen, and I wish I had known about the autograph copy, because I got mine from Amazon. I think I'll get another one.
All right. I'd be happy to send you one.
So listeners, as usual, we want to start with sharing some resources. And again, if you would like to give or donate to Rise Out of the Ashes Inc., you can visit GoFundMe, and you can look for our page, Rise Out of the Ashes Inc., if you want to help us with our immediate and emergency funding. That is how we help victims and survivors going through issues dealing with domestic violence. We help with doctors' visits, transportation, clothing, food, medication. Those things are very important that in your everyday normal life we can take for granted. Those are some of the very basic things that really become emergencies. So those are some of the things that we do. You can visit our GoFundMe page. You can write a check. We have a P.O. box now. If you would like to mail a check, you can mail it to P.O. Box 15, P.O. Box 15, and that is in Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania. The zip is 19026. The first resource that I want to share is Pastor Darius Daniels. He's the pastor of Change Church, and he has several locations in the United States. His website is dariusdaniels.com. His YouTube channel is Darius Daniels TV. And again, I always say that listening to Pastor Daniels, this is if you're at a point where you have done some healing work and you're just ready to go for a deeper healing in the process. I highly recommend that. I want to share the National Domestic Violence Hotline in the United States. Their website is thehotline.org. Their phone number is 1-800-799-7233. For information on male sexual abuse in the UK, you can visit the Male Survivors Partnership. Their website is malesurvivor.co.uk. In Australia, we want to share the National Family Violence Counseling Service. Their website is www.1800respect.org.au. Their phone number is 1-800-737-732. And then in Canada, we have the Canadian Women's Foundation. Their website is canadianwomen.org. Their phone number is 1-866-293-4483. And just a reminder, Love Bay family, wherever you are, whatever country you are in, you can search for and look for the National Domestic Violence Agency of where you live. And the national agency should be able to direct you to a local agency closer to your home where you live. So no matter where you are, there should be help available. And if you need to reach out to us to help you find it, we will do that. So you can email us if you need some help, and we will do our best. So again, Love Bay, our topic on tonight is the third gift. JD, I have to tell you that from the very, very first line of this book, I was just captured and drawn in from the first sentence. And it wasn't so much that it was a trigger. It was a confirmation to myself it was a confirmation of my own thoughts, my own feelings from my own story of what I was going through or what I had been through. And I mean, even years ago, it was like a validation that I didn't even know I was still needing or was still expecting to receive in some kind of way. It was just, which I think a validation is the best word. From the outset of your writing, I felt validated. And
Well, thank you.
I mean, it's just beautiful. I want to read the first sentence.
I was going to ask you to do that. Yeah.
Okay. After reading what I have written here so many times, half in disbelief and the other half to stay factual, I realized that the journey is not over and maybe just beginning. When I wrote my book is Suffering in Silence. And as you know, when you write, you have to keep going back to your work because you have to proofread. You have to make sure that the grammar, punctuations are right. But because you're writing this, I know that feeling of wanting to make sure I'm telling the truth. Like, I'm not just writing a story because I'm not just trying to draw attention. I don't want this to be like trauma porn and I'm just throwing it out there just to do it. I'm not taking my ex-spouse and throwing them under the bus just to do it. I want to tell the truth because me telling my truth is helping me. I want to tell my truth. I want to share these facts. And so that's one point. And then the other side really was, did this stuff really happen?
Yeah.
It was like reading my own words. It was like, did this really happen to me? And I'm looking at it. I had people who were close to me, Pastor May Davis and Mrs. Cheryl McFadden, who were either there in my story, they saw what was going on, or they were seeing the aftermath once I did leave. I had them specifically read it, these two people specifically, because I wanted them to be able to keep me truthful and honest. I didn't want to exaggerate anything. I wanted to tell the truth. And there are moments when I kind of felt guilty a little bit. Like, am I blowing this out of proportion? It was like I was still fighting the words that I had people saying to me when I first started saying, I need help. This is abuse. And people were saying, maybe you're making a big deal out of nothing. So I was fighting that. And so I needed them to read my work and just to hear them say, not only did this happen, but I saw it. I saw some of this. Mm-hmm. And so to read this, it was like I could feel what you felt, you know, and there were a lot of similarities between my story and yours, you know, one being the length of marriage. I was married for 19 years when I left. And then when you first start September 2014, it was around that time when I made the decision, you know, to leave, and I started putting my plan together. You know, so I know September 2014, I'll let you, you know, take over and share, but I saw so much that I wanted to bring out, and I had so many questions. I had to force myself to stop writing questions. I'm like, I have to let this man speak.
No. Ask the questions away whenever. Yeah, it's hard to believe that. It's September of 2014. Seems like forever ago, and it seems like just yesterday, right?
Yes, absolutely. So what I want to do, I want to read the prologue.
Please.
And I want to just give this right to you. My very first question is, can you please explain the title and then just go from there? But I just the prologue, and then the floor is yours.
Yeah, go ahead. No, listen, you're doing beautifully.
Thank you.
A couple of things. I'll have to pick up a copy of your book, and then secondly, please send me a link to the organization Rising Out of the Ashes.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, because I'd like to do something, you know, whether it's today or whenever it is. I would like to support, you know, the organization in whatever fashion that I can. Go ahead and read the prologue if you'd like.
Thank you. Yes. So this is the prologue. Wake up. Wake up. The chiseled sheriff's deputy bellowed as he stood by the side of my hospital bed. I faded in and out of sleep as he repeatedly poked me in the chest and tugged on my wrist-of-flight gown. In the dimly lit room, as my assigned babysitter looked on, he recited some court orders. I was too mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted to care or comprehend what he was saying. The only thing I vividly recall from September 16, 2014, at 3:30 a.m. were his words, "You have been involuntarily committed." I just
Yeah, it takes me back, and yeah, we're coming up on 10 years, and
Yep.
on that day I had no explanation at all for what was going on in my marriage. None whatsoever. I had no idea how did I get here? How did I end up in this position? I mean, I do know looking back now, which I think is important for your audience. And I love the fact that you shared all the resources from the outset and all the resources in all the various countries. Because that's the mistake that I made for the first 9 months of going through my journey is I told nobody. I isolated myself. I allowed myself to be isolated. It wasn't a male thing. It wasn't a pride thing. It wasn't shame or embarrassment. I was just confused as to what the hell was going on. But allowing her to isolate me enabled her and her mother, thus the subtitle, to just really hollow me out, from whether it was death threats on our lovely family beach trip, where she threatened to kill me. So her mother did, suggested I was addicted to porn, addicted to drugs. And that was just part of the downward spiral. A couple months later is when I end up, involuntarily committed. And there's a lot behind it, and it's all packed into the book. And so the title of the book, you asked me to explain it. The first two gifts are my kids, and my second gift, my daughter is getting married next Saturday, so I'm looking forward to that. But so the first two gifts are my kids, my son Billy, my daughter Katie, and then the third gift, believe it or not, was once we had separated. There was a lot of craziness in between, but once we had separated and we're sitting in separate rooms, separate town condo setup or whatever, attorney going back and forth with our attorneys, the third gift was where she made the accusation that I gave her sexually transmitted herpes. And it was the gift that ultimately would set me free emotionally. It was the beginning of, it was the man above. Okay. So I'm glad you referenced the pastor early on. I'm a man of faith. I've always been a man of faith, but my faith has become even stronger. Adversity will have a way of doing that. You either run from your faith or you run towards it. I ran towards it. But that accusation opened my eyes to the fact that everything you've been accusing me of doing, she's been doing. So massive infidelity, hidden prescription drug addiction. It took me a while to uncover it all, but I luckily had access to all of her medical claims and her pharmacy claims because I was paying the bills. I was the primary card holder. So I spent hours and hours and hours building spreadsheets trying to figure out what in the hell has she been up to, what has been going on. So it truly was a gift, because had she never made that, and I can't stress it enough to anybody, had she never made that, and that's where I think God absolutely intervened, had she never made that accusation, I don't know where I'd be today. I don't know where I'd be with my relationship with my kids. I certainly wouldn't have had the majority of the truth that I have today. There's no other way to look at it other than the good Lord saying, "Look, son, your marriage is over, and you're too stupid to see it." So I'm going to intervene on your behalf, and I'm going to do it in the form of herpes because I have a sense of humor. And so, yeah, I discovered hidden prescription drug addiction to amphetamines, benzos, you name it. I would later discover that she used our kids for 2 years to fill 600 days worth of amphetamines in their names over the course of 20 months because her what she call him, her miracle worker, who was a guy who was more than likely just writing prescriptions for cash because he never took insurance. He got into trouble with the North Carolina Medical Board and with the DEA for inappropriate prescriptions of narcotics and so forth, so on. So her supply had run out. But again, had she never made that accusation, I wouldn't have discovered the truth. And she either did it because, and I'll never know the real answer, I think it's because she was certain she had infected me. So, 3 weeks before I was alienated and manipulated out of my home, she used our daughter to do that, used her as a weapon to do that. We had been together 3 nights in a row when we hadn't been intimate in 4 months. So now, as I look back on now and even a few years ago, as I was peeling this all back, I mean, the only time when she was intentionally trying to infect me with something. And you guys talk about sexual abuse, and I was sexually assaulted by her on one occasion, to the point where I got up and I had blood. As I'm going into the bathroom, I see blood running down the side of my face. I don't know what she cut me with. I have no idea, but it was just that violent and that aggressive. So it does happen to men too. And the only reason, there's many reasons why I wrote the book. I didn't write the book to make it a men too versus me too, because we are equal opportunity offenders. And I have learned that, emotional and psychological abuse does not discriminate by gender. It's about 50-50, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the sexual abuse and the domestic violence is probably more heavily weighted towards men being the guilty offenders. But my female therapist at the time said, when you're done with this, and we had no idea when it was a 5-year journey through hell. She's like, when you're done, you need to write a book, because there's not enough books out there, if any, about men on the other side of the equation. Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story.
Yeah.
I want to take a moment to emphasize, I want to say to men who may be listening to us, or to others who know men who may need to hear this, you can contact these same agencies. Help is available to men through these agencies. So there's not a different pathway that you have to go through. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. You can call the national numbers for wherever you live, or go to those websites. There's not information that says this is for you if you are an abused woman. This is for you if you are an abused man. No, this is for you if you have experienced domestic violence or sexual assault. So we want to encourage men to get this information. The second thing that I wanted to say, you used the word allow. And I want to point out that, and I've heard Jen say this a lot, abuse is just insidious, mm-hmm. to the point where you don't know. It's like you think, I'm feeling this way because of what I did, because of what I caused to happen. But no, it was actually a part of his or her plan, yeah, in the long run, for them to get you into the spot. And so I think a lot of times, and I can say this because I know it for myself, I've experienced it for myself. It's not that we allowed this situation or that we created this situation. We were manipulated into. Yeah. That's part of the abuse. We were emotionally and psychologically abused. It was like, I looked up one day and I had no friends. Mm-hmm. I had no friends. I separated myself, mm-hmm. from everyone. And now, being out of it, I can look back. He never wanted to go anywhere. He never wanted to be with anyone. If I wanted to spend time with friends, male or female, he had a problem. He would be jealous. He would make me feel guilty. Even in church, he would say, mm-hmm. You're over there praying with them. I want you to pray with me. Wow. You're over here talking to them. I want to go home. Let's leave. And, I felt like I'm doing what I need to do for my family. So I'm going to distance myself from these people over here who were really friends. But looking back in hindsight, that was his plan. It was a part of the manipulation. And I think that that's something that we have to work through.
Yeah, your point is very well taken. Yeah. And I will work on changing my vernacular around that. But it was how I felt. I don't feel that way anymore, but it's how I felt at the time, is that, man, you should have, how did you not see this? How I'm reasonably, the biggest thing I had to get over was kicking myself, blaming myself, because I'm reasonably intelligent, and you go, how the hell did you miss this? How did you allow this to happen? Especially when I ended up in the psych facility for 9 days, 2 different facilities with a police transport in between the two. I'm like, how did I get here? What happened? And the other thing I wanted to say, to your listeners, because I've said this and she did that with me too. I come from a very large family. I've got 5 brothers, 3 sisters, marrieds, and a bunch of nieces and nephews and grandnieces and nephews, and that's one of the blessings that's come out of this situation is you rebuild bonds that had been broken. You strengthen things, and the strength of my family and the love of my family has never been stronger, and it's fantastic. So there's been a lot of things that have come out of this that have been blessings. But as I started getting through the other side of it, you get family and friends that come forward and say, we knew some things were off.
Yeah.
We could see her pill eyes. We could tell that she was on something or something wasn't right. And I'm like, why didn't you say anything? So that'd be my message to somebody out there. If you've got a friend or a loved one that you suspect something's not right, or you see something that doesn't sit right with you, yeah, it may cost you a friendship or whatever, but damn it, say something. Mm-hmm. And if they're not if they're a true friend, they will allow you to have that conversation. They will allow you to have that adult conversation with them. But say something, for God's sakes. And I wish a few people had said some things to me. And they did.
Yeah. And I took issue with after the fact. It was like everybody had something to say afterwards. It was right. Like, I don't need it now. Yeah. I don't need to hear the opinions now, so I wholeheartedly understand that.
Yeah. We saw the train coming. We just didn't want to tell you. Yeah.
Yeah. Until it crashed, and you still didn't say anything then until I did.
Well, I crawled out of the train, and you said, "Oh, thank God you're still alive." Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So, I want to ask you about
sure.
the protein powder, mm-hmm. and then I'll open the floor for Jen and Erin after this. Reading through the story, what was a trigger for me was the protein powder.
Wow.
Because I use protein powder on a regular basis. Like I exercise all the time. I was an avid runner. I don't run as much. I do more walking now, but mm-hmm. kickboxing, lifting weights. I'm always doing a protein shake. Like I have like more. I do more protein shakes than I do actual food. Mm-hmm. And in reading that, it was a real trigger, and it wasn't just invoking a memory for me. It was the feelings and emotions that were attached. I vividly remember not only knowing that my ex-husband was capable of taking my life, but knowing that he was going to do it. If I did not make the choice to leave that house when I left, I knew he was going to do it. I knew it was going to happen. And so when I read about the protein powder, it brought all that back to me. Now, he used to play with knives all the time. And so I thought that was how he was going to take my life, with a knife. And he used to play with knives in front of me and just all kinds of things. So I want to ask you, how do you handle the memories and reminders or triggers that may come up for you? Because all this week, every time I make a shake, it's it's not it doesn't cripple me. I'm not, I don't go into a shell, but it's like, man, I think about it. Now I'm in a better place today, so I think all the good, the counseling and my support, and I have Jen and Erin, so I wasn't crushed. But I had the thought, it just brought back those memories. So how do you handle anything that may be a trigger for you?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, so when the book came out, and so at the time the book came out, it was right around as COVID was hitting. My mother had passed away. I had a lot of additional life things coming down on me. I went back into therapy for a little while, and that was for 5 or 6 months that I went back into therapy. And that's one thing I've recognized, that look, if if you feel that you need to talk to somebody, go talk to somebody. But aside from that, I haven't been in therapy. The way I haven't had my biggest triggers or my biggest PTSD, believe it or not, was from my time in a psychiatric facility. It was the young kids that I was in there with. It was a weird. I obviously had never been in a psych facility, but the living arrangements shocked me. I was in there with teenagers, young adults, older adults, men and women. We're all kind of commingled, and well, I guess this is a weird setup to begin with, but there were a lot of kids, young kids in there that legitimately had made attempts to take their lives, and you can only stare at the walls for so long. So you start talking to some of them and hearing their stories, and maybe they decided they wanted to confide in the old man, myself here. And they're like, yeah, we're not getting any help. And they're sending me home tomorrow. And I'm afraid I'm going to take my life when I go home, So I would have nightmares about them showing up on the porch of my home with guns to their head and me not being able to do anything about it, And then you wake up in a cold sweat. But I think that was all triggered by the book coming out and all sorts of things. And as you had talked about, Evangelist, is when you write it, and even now, if I open my own book and read it, I go, I forgot all about that. I forgot that happened. I tucked that away. But for me, where I finally found peace was probably a year and a half to 2 years ago, was truly a shift in my mindset, focusing more on gratitude, right? Gratitude and humility, and gratitude for being alive, gratitude to the man above for getting me through all of it, getting my kids through it, keeping my kids safe, making my kids, having my kids make very positive choices when they could have gone in several different directions, because they endured this throughout their college and high school careers. So it's just really a mindset shift of gratitude rather than focusing on, on the negativity. And it's really my faith in putting God more front and center is where I truly found inner peace. But if things were to pop up again that I needed to go talk to somebody, I wouldn't hesitate to do so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, Erin, do you have a question or comment for JD?
Yeah, thank you.
I buy the pre-mixed protein drinks now. No.
Oh my. Full disclosure, JD, I have not read the book. So looking forward to that. Really appreciate you sharing what you have so far. And,
not at all.
I think I have, a couple of things. One is I'm one of 10 children, so I just had to share that with you because there's only a few of us out there. And
yeah, I'm 5 of 9. I'm 5 of 9. So yeah, I'm the middle neglected one. Yeah, where are you in the order?
I'm 10.
Oh wow, you're the spoiled one. Okay,
I am the squirt. Yes, yeah.
Oh, by the way, Erin, so when you read the book, if you're gracious enough to do so, that's the name. That's the name I selected for my now ex-wife. So no offense.
Okay. All right. Well, between the protein shake and yes, the dance with the devil, all of that is very.
That's not her real name. The only thing I changed was the names in a few locations, and I didn't do it for legal reasons because the majority of it's public record. But I did it really to protect the privacy of my kids and to protect the privacy of all those that got pulled into it. There were a lot of people that got pulled in. So anyhow, thought I'd share that. Don't be offended when you read it. So
yeah, no, that's a great. That was going to be maybe one of my questions later on about the privacy piece, and thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think one thing I wanted to ask you, and this may come out in the book again, but just since I haven't read it, can you share with me or with our audience around what did you break through stereotypical barriers from our culture, from international culture around women abusing men in order to share your story? Or are you just really evolved and completely get that violence to anyone is wrong? But how did you get past cultural or social stereotypes that, okay, men are stronger, men don't, this doesn't happen to men. Yeah. I'm saying stuff that I know is not true, but I'm just wondering where you were with that barrier and how you moved through it.
Yeah, that's a great question. To be honest with you, it was never a barrier. I didn't give it a thought.
Wow.
You know, especially when I had my female therapist, attorneys, you name it, anybody that got pulled into our mess, and there were a lot of people. They're like, man, you need to write a book. And I would have people that would call me as I was going through it, going, look, hey, I know you're going in the middle of a nasty situation, but anything surprising happened yet? Anything new happened? You know, because there was constantly new discoveries. So people on my side said, when you write the book, including my attorneys, here's the name I want you to use for me. So it was barrier wasn't a problem for me. Now, when I put it out on social media, you know, I expected, you know, I've had tremendous support on a lot of the platforms from men and women alike. But you know, it was some of the men that would come at me, you know. And I expected it, but they would come at me, tell me to put on my big boy pants and man up and get over it and da 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 da. And of course, I'd have to explain to them, the ones I chose to interact with, that look, I'm promoting a book here. I'm promoting a book to support a couple of nonprofits. So if you don't like it, you know, move on.
Yeah.
But it in short, it wasn't a barrier for me. I never thought twice about it.
And I guess
now that I've written it, I've heard from many men that have said, you know, thank you. You know, my brother's going through a similar thing. Mothers that have come out and said, my son has gone through this, or he's going through it. I've got a current lady that messages me quite a bit on TikTok, which is where the arsenic piece really blew up a couple of years ago. But yeah, she has a son that's going through a very similar situation, and thanked me for the book, because she said we learned some strategies and we learned quite a bit from you from writing it, you know, especially my court proceedings. So the court proceedings are in there in detail, both the domestic violence trial and our alimony trial. I took advantage of the concept of, you know, public record, and got the transcripts for it. So
that is phenomenal, and I love that. For one, you didn't see it as a barrier, you didn't experience that, and even some of the backlash that it sounds like you may have gotten on social media is not horribly impactful, because you're hearing from people that are, you know, supporting you with your story, saying thank you, that acknowledgement. And I think that just goes to show how stereotypes never work, and they never tell the whole truth. And I think when anyone shares their story like you did, that is what rings loud, you know, the truth of it, not what people perceive is a, you know, statistically, like you said, domestic violence. Maybe it's more on men, maybe it's, you know, that sort of thing. And I think that for you to just bring this conversation and lay it out on a very wide canvas for everybody to take a look at how this might be happening in their own life. Yeah. And something you said in the beginning, you said that emotional abuse is a 50-50 thing. Mm-hmm. And I really want to just acknowledge that. And I think it doesn't have to get to wanting to kill the person that you live with, right, to be emotional abuse. And we all of us have to check ourselves with how we want to unconsciously or consciously want to punish people for our own pain. Yeah. And so thank you for saying that.
You're welcome. And the interesting thing with that is she played the game, you know, she played the emotional game where you pull you back in, as my brother would say. Yeah, she'd pull you back in long enough to punch you in the face again, emotionally. I would have preferred the physical violence, quite frankly, because you can see it coming. But of course, she attempted to take my life with the arsenic, which I didn't figure out until about a year after we separated. But she was a master at it, like played the game of, okay, we'll go to a therapist. And if we go to a therapist and I would try some of the things the therapist would recommend, and boom, I'd get those thrown right back in my face. You know, I think the infamous one is having a conversation with her, trying to understand what might be going on or whatever, just having a nice, gentle conversation, expressing something that I felt was hurtful to me. I can picture her today looking at me going, everything's hurtful to you. Yeah. And shutting you down, you know, shutting me down. Like, I'm fine. This is not going to work. So yeah, she was a master. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that we have to remember when we're dealing with manipulators and abusers is that you're not coming from, and I hate this word, but you're not coming from a normal perspective. You are not coming from a typical perspective. You can't necessarily anticipate the same way that you would with somebody who is playing on the same playing field that you are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, JD, your experience is a lifetime movie in the making, and I wouldn't be surprised if you got a deal, by the way.
Yeah, not yet.
If you ever get the options for that, you know, and
have you seen Gone Girl?
yes.
Yeah. So take out the murder and the infidelity on Ben Affleck's part. That was it. And I was in the middle of my nightmare when my brother brought it. He's like, "Yeah, that's you, man. That's like your situation." He said, "Don't watch that movie. Don't watch it." So I watched it. And I'm like, holy cow! This is how effective these manipulators are. And she fooled everybody along the way.
Yeah,
everybody. And the only thing I will say in defense of men going into the legal system, right, and having the domestic violence case worked out great. She didn't get a restraining order on trumped up charges, and I was not nervous until I talked to my attorney. He's like, "Well, her getting a restraining order is not a big deal. The only problem is she can call the cops at any time and tell them you were at the house, and they'd have no choice but to arrest you." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, even if I wasn't there, like, yeah, they'll come and arrest you. And I'm like, wow. And now I believe it. Now I'm going through the very broken system. But the only thing I would say is I think men in these situations, we come into the system, even the legal system, the lawyers, the judges, I think they have the inherent bias. She was able to say whatever she wanted, and she dragged her family and a few of her long lost friends that she pulled out of the woodwork to testify about how controlling I was, with no evidence or nothing to substantiate it. And it was all accepted by the judge, by the female judge. So I think we come in with an inherent bias, but whatever, we've lived to fight another day. So,
I think what's interesting too is that I really do think it harkens back to talking about what level people are communicating on, because I've heard horror stories from both men and women going through the legal system, and going through this in the smoothest way possible is awful. Going through this and dragging it out in court is horrifying.
Yes.
But I think, again, it's like you come to the table and all you want is to be able to walk away intact, right? Like at that point, you're coming to the table and you're like, I just don't even care anymore. Like, take whatever you want. I need to go. Like, I just want to be away from you.
Yeah.
But you're still telling the truth. And these abusers, what we fail to recognize systemically is that they're willing to say and do anything to get what they want.
Absolutely.
And so I think, male and female, if they are the abuser, the lengths that they are willing to go to have the outcome that they want, I mean, they are literally willing to kill for it.
Yep.
So we cannot overstate how dangerous they are. And then all of the sudden you get into a courtroom, you think that goes away? Absolutely not. That same energy is there through the whole process.
And it's even heightened. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's heightened. Sure. And I think the problem with the legal system, in their defense, I guess I'll come to their defense a little bit. I think they're just desensitized by it. Sure. They see this day in and day out.
Yeah.
They're just like, another one, another nutty family, another manipulator, another abuser, whatever. I'm overworked. I remember in my case, we finished up, and the judge is like, "Yeah, I'm going to need 4 or 5 months to take this under advisement." I'm like, 4 or 5 months? She's like, "Yeah, I get 1 admin day a month." I'm like, "Okay." So we're going to have to wait 4 or 5 months for a ruling so I can decide if I like the ruling. If I don't like the ruling, what am I going to do with it legally? And oh, by the way, do I have any money left? Probably not.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, is both men and women. And that's why, again, I'm glad. I hope some of the resources that you've shared also include like free legal assistance or free legal guidance or whatever, because I was, my retirement fund got crushed, but I had a retirement fund. I know a lot of people don't have a retirement fund. I know there are both men and women alone that don't have the means to fight for themselves and don't have the means to go through the fight for child custody or whatever the case may be. So I look at, and this is where the gratitude thing comes in. And this is where I told my kids as we were going through it, I'm like, look, no matter how bad you think we have it, there are millions that have it a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have it so bad. It's a concept of relativity, and this is what kept me sane. This is what kept me going. It's like, yeah, you could fall down in that victimhood, and I could fall down the pity pit real quick. And I did on occasion, and you pull yourself back up as fast as you fell in. But so there are a lot that don't have the resources, but I think the court systems, again, they're just so numb to it all.
They are. First, I do want to say that if you contact the domestic violence agency, there are other resources available through those agencies. So domestic violence agencies should be able to connect you to resources if you're dealing with family law, if you're dealing with custody, if you're dealing with alimony, child support. So it's like you go in and your situation should be assessed, and whatever you need, that is what the agency is supposed to help you get, even if it's connecting you with another agency. Everyone that comes in is not going to need shelter, but some people are. Yep. Everyone who goes in is not going to need finances, but some people do. Mm-hmm. And so the agency is not there just to talk about the immediate experience that you just had, but we need to make sure that you're safe right now. Okay, yep. And we get that immediate plan together. Now, what do you need going forward? So it's not a one and done. That is what a good agency does. That is what they should do. In Philadelphia, there is an agency called Women's Aid. They deal specifically with law, helping women to deal with the law. So you can search for agencies that are specifically for that, or again, go to a domestic violence agency, let them know what you need, and ask them to connect you with the resources that they have. And then my personal thought on the judicial system, dealing with DAs, dealing with police departments, I know that it is a tiring job. I know that they see some things that are harrowing. They see some things that are really tough, and they need breaks. They need help. I understand that, but at the same time, this is your job.
That's right.
What you do. So you need some regular training to know how to deal with trauma, to know how to deal with domestic violence, to know how to deal with sexual assault. I don't think that training in these areas should be optional, which, to my surprise, it is. Yeah. But I mean, this is your job. This is what you do. So, and I'm not saying that it's easy, but doing the right thing isn't always easy. And I mean, you have these people in front of you who need your help, who need your assistance. If I need you to walk me through this police statement, I need you to walk me through this case. I mean, it is scary sitting in a courtroom.
Yeah.
I mean, just to walk in is like, oh my God, the buildings and then you see the judge sitting behind this. It's terrifying. So I need you to do your job. You might not feel like it, but I need you to be on your game. That's what you're there for. So, and I'm not saying that it's easy, but it should be done.
Yep.
But I wanted to ask you, JD, because you specifically mentioned having a female therapist. Mm-hmm. And I know that there are some men who come to me to be counseled in these areas dealing with domestic violence because I am a woman. Now, there are some areas or some men that I have dealt with. I helped them as much as I could, but I could clearly see they needed to speak to a man. Mm. Now, a man who was trained to deal with trauma and who understood, domestic violence and who understood sexual assault. But at least in some of the men that have come across my path, I could see they actually really did need to speak to another man, but they were fearful of it because they didn't want to be embarrassed. Did it make a difference to you if you were speaking to a male or a female therapist?
No, it didn't. It didn't. And I will say that, I had a male therapist as well. He was my psychiatrist at the time. He wasn't very good at psychotherapy, but he was like, yeah, I could do your psychotherapy too, along with your med management. So I'm like, that's fine. That way I don't have to bounce all over the place. But it was my female attorney that recommended this female therapist, but I wouldn't have either. I wouldn't have a problem either way. And what I liked about her is experienced in very knowledgeable about gaslighting and NPD and borderline personality disorder and so I had her throughout my journey throughout the courts and through post courts and whatever. She predicted everything that would happen, including I was alienated from my daughter for 2 years, so if things weren't bad enough, and this is why next Saturday will be very emotional for me. She's been back in my life for 8 years now. Mom's nowhere in the picture, and we can get into that, whatever, now or another time. But yeah, it's my favorite chapter in the book when she came back into my life. Chapter 19. I don't know if you got there, Evangelist, yet, but it's titled "Hi, Daddy." So she was old enough to recognize that there's something not right with Mom here, and she reached out to me after, again, for us being kind of very estranged for 8 months, but pseudo estranged even when I lived in the home, especially when I came home from the psych facility. She really wanted nothing to do with me, and I didn't blame her. Because of everything that she was thinking about me, that she had been told. She was 15, 16 at the time when all this went down. So I appreciated the female perspective from my female therapist side. She was very good, very good, very knowledgeable.
So that is good to hear, because I think, and again, with some of the men who have come across my path, I think they were limiting themselves because they were specifically just looking for a female therapist out of fear. So it was like compounding more fear on top of what they already had. They were limiting the help that they could possibly get because of the shame and because of the stigma attached to it. So with that, I would ask you, what do you say to men who find themselves in an abusive relationship or marriage, or who may be coming to terms or just like trying to figure this out? Because again, you said it was 5 years. For me, I was in my marriage. It didn't start off abusive. It wasn't. I was years into it, before I realized this is not right. Something is off. So when
I was 17 years into it before, and looking back now, you go, well, were you really as happy as you thought? But
yeah,
your point of reference at the time, right? And you go, well, yeah, we were happy, we were stable. And being in a very healthy relationship that I've been in for the last 4 years, I would say, nah, you weren't that happy. But the thing I would say to any of the male listeners, first of all, again, don't isolate yourself. Find somebody to confide in, whether it's religious personnel, whether it's a therapist, whether it's family, friends, somebody you can trust to keep you grounded in your objectivity. If I would have went to one of my brothers, and my brother Al, he's my hero. Him and his wife.
Yeah, I like Al. I like Al.
Yeah, they stood by me 24/7. Had I gone to him after what went down on the beach trip in June, when her mother threatened to kill me, suggested I was addicted to porn, addicted to drugs, had I gone to him with that, he would have brought me back to a sense of objectivity to say, whoa. I mean, he certainly would have questioned me. That he lived in PA, I was living in North Carolina at the time, but he would have questioned me, but I would have had a sense of objectivity. So my point is, find somebody to help elevate your objectivity, remove the subjectivity, remove the isolation. And secondly, most importantly, don't ignore your gut.
Yes.
If your gut is telling you something isn't right, look into it. Now, the compounding thing for me, when I started seeing signs and symptoms and other things, I attributed it to her. And Erin, this is where it gets really complicated. A lot of layers in the book. I attributed it to her alleged autoimmune disease. So I'm in the medical pharmaceutical field. I've been in it for 30 plus years. Knowledge is power, but knowledge can be dangerous. I'm talking to docs behind her back that I know personally to go, look, I'm seeing paranoia. I'm seeing delusions, mood swings, agitation. Can that be due to her autoimmune disease? And I'm like, oh yeah, it can attack any organ in the body. I'll never forget my inpatient psychiatrist. He turned out to be a real jerk. But my first interaction with him was like, yeah, man, I wish I would have done additional research at the University of Florida when I was there on the impact of autoimmune diseases, because it certainly can impact you neurologically, your brain, everything. So when I started to see some of the things that were concerning to me, I dismissed those and chalked those up to her alleged autoimmune disease. Mm-hmm. But as we got down into the alimony trial and we peeled back the onion on all sorts of stuff, turns out she doesn't even have a legit autoimmune disease. She was never diagnosed with one. Even though she went to prestigious clinics in Florida, the medical records would reflect she doesn't have one. Mm. And I never asked to see her medical records, being the loving, trusting husband and all that fun stuff. So a lot of the red flags that I started to see later in our marriage, I attributed it to something that I shouldn't have been attributing it to. So talk to somebody, don't isolate yourself, and don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed of letting somebody know what you're going through. Because I think the stigma is starting to lift a little bit, especially around the emotional and the psychological abuse. And I hope it is. But talk to somebody. Talk to somebody and don't ignore your gut. If you got something gnawing at you, investigate it somehow. And I didn't get the gut feel that she was cheating on me until the night before our first mediation. My sister-in-law said to me over the phone, she said, Danny, the guilty are usually the accusers.
Absolutely.
And that was the first night that I went in to her phone records, which I paid the phone bill, so I had access to it. Never went in before. Never knew how to do it. I had to call AT&T to figure out, how do I search her phone records? And lo and behold, who did she make the primary account holder on our phone plan? Our 16-year-old daughter. I'm like, what? They said, yeah, are you Stephanie? I'm like, no, that's my daughter. No. She said, well, she's a primary account holder. I said, what? Who? She's 16. Who made her the primary account holder? Well, your wife. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, she was doing all sorts of stuff behind my back.
That just don't make sense.
No. She had a masterful plan for sure. And again, that's why the title of the book is perfect, because without that herpes accusation, I wouldn't have looked. Mm-hmm. I had no reason to believe that she was cheating on me, because she was so sick. I use that in quotations. She was sick from her amphetamines and benzos and other pills. She was what they call prescription speedballing. But she's in bed at 8:30 at night, wiped out from her alleged autoimmune disease.
Wow.
I was living a lie for probably my entire marriage.
You know what? It's interesting that you say that, because I truly have had that thought about my own first marriage, that it was a lie. Even when I believed that things were good or okay, I mean, hindsight is 2020. I can look back and I can see I was not happy. Yeah. I was trying to live a life that was the picture that everybody else thought it was supposed to be, and yes. I truly wasn't happy. So I completely understand that. I really do. Yeah. Erin and Jen, do you have a final question for JD? And I have to say, your name is cool. I love JD. It's just cool.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, JD, I would just ask if were you, in terms of your character, are you the kind of person that's over responsible? Like,
yes,
you take, okay. I just wanted to.
You're number 1 of 10. So being, or you're number 10 of 10, right?
10 of 10.
Yeah. So being 5 of 9, and this again, I've told people, and they think I'm crazy. There's a song. It's I think it's Max McNown, right? He says, "Am I crazy to be grateful for all the pain?" I'm grateful for all the pain because I've learned so much and I've grown so much. But what I've learned through the journey, through my therapist at the time, who was fantastic, being middle child of 9, you're a pleaser. You have a need to be needed. And with all her illnesses, and again, I hate to keep using in quotations, but I felt the need to be needed. I needed to be her caregiver. I needed to have sympathy for her. Little did I know a lot of this was self-induced from the medications I had no idea she was taking. But I am absolutely a pleaser. And I won't change who I am, but I have had to learn boundaries with a lot of people.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn boundaries, and people have to learn to respect that.
Awesome.
Yeah. And the other beauty of adversity, there's so many gifts to it. And I call it weed in the garden, right? The ability to remove people from your life that really add no value, that just take. And you find it out with adversity. I found that out with professional colleagues that I helped elevate their careers. I found that out with some of my family, found that out with friends that quickly turned their backs and ran and wanted nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I don't have I mean, I have a lot of questions, but I don't have a question, more of a statement. Just, I really appreciate how open you are to different like aspects of abuse and to different modalities of healing. I think one of the hardest parts in advocacy is, and even in just being a survivor, is after you get over the hump of survival mode and you're kind of coming out of that, and it's the what do you do next, and it's that is kind of the time that you really start to see people hit a wall of just getting really stuck, because you get through survival mode, that your body, your brain has the power to do that. It's when everything stops that you see people really start to struggle. And I have seen so many people who have tried therapy, one therapist, and have like given up because it didn't work for them. And I get it. It's a lot. It's frustrating. You already feel so exhausted. But to hear you talk about the different ways that you've walked through healing, the different avenues you've sought out, I just think it's really inspiring as a survivor in general, but especially as a man who is talking about his survivorhood. And then one of the other things that you said about trusting your gut, it's something I've been talking a lot about recently, actually, coincidentally. And one thing that I really have come to believe to be true is that if your gut is telling you that something is wrong, it's probably already worse than your mind thinks it is.
Yeah.
Right. So like we have a great way of talking ourselves down from things and without any outside influence. And so I think when we get that gut feeling, it's really an indication that things are further along than we think they are.
And they were. They were.
Yeah. So trust your gut.
Yeah, trust your gut for sure. Yeah. The other thing I will say, and there was an excellent. Listen, I'll come back anytime. I've absolutely enjoyed this platform and the conversation and the Q&A. And at the end of the day, whether you have, and again, and this, no offense, hopefully you get through social media, when you put your story out there, you get every shyster in the world that wants to come at you and help you and be a man's coach and do this and do that. And ultimately, yes, you need therapy. You need someone to talk to and all that. But ultimately, you've got to make the decision. You've got to put in the work. You've got to shift that mind to where it's, all right, I'm going to go from being poor me and the victim to let's be grateful for this opportunity of freedom. And to your point, Jem, what are you going to do with it now, right? What's your purpose now? And it's an opportunity. I shudder to think about still being in that marriage, had none of this happened. But ultimately though, it's your decision where you've got to put in the work.
Yeah.
You can have the greatest therapist in the world, whoever, counselor, life coach, whatever, telling you what you need to do, but you got to put in the work.
Yeah. And I just want to, I'm going to piggyback on what you said, Jen, about the next. And then JD, we're going to give you the final words of tonight in Love Bay. JD is absolutely going to be back with us. He will be back with us next October. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we already worked that out.
All right. Yeah.
But I just want to piggyback on that next. There is a next. You know, you do get through survival mode. There comes a point when your life, your mind, your heart, you will settle down. You do have to do the work. You have to put the work in it. But there is a next. Mm-hmm. And when you get to that next, there's a next after that. So whatever goals you create for yourself, it doesn't always have to be about I have to go and see the counselor. Right. No, it could be, what am I going to do for myself right now? Am I going to go back to school? Mm-hmm. Am I going to purchase a nice item for myself? Am I going to take a nice trip? How are you going to focus on yourself? So the next really is you continuing to build yourself and move forward. Yeah. And your next could be rebuilding your support system. I tell people all the time, if I am in your life, you should see some improvement somewhere. If I'm not helping you in some kind of way, what's the point of me being in your life? If you are not adding value to my life, why are you in my life? Because I don't want to stay stagnant, so I'm not going to let you keep me where I am. I'm definitely not going to let you pull me backwards or pull me down. So we need to be moving forward together. So are we moving forward together in our exercising and eating habits? Are we moving forward together in our careers? Are we moving forward together in ministry? Are we moving forward together and planning our trips? Are we going to go around the world? What are we doing together that's moving forward? Yeah. If you don't see some positivity, and it doesn't have to be about spending money, but it's joy. I shouldn't see you come in and like, oh my God, I can't deal with him. I can't deal with her. It's. I could have stayed with my ex-husband for that. You know what I mean? So next can be scary, but next is also beautiful. Yeah. Next can be what you created to be, and next can be fun. You know, Erin, I remember when my next was the Camaro. Now my next is going to be a Lamborghini. That's on my list. Wait, and I have to tell you,
oh my gosh,
I thought about another next. I so long I wanted to learn to ride motorcycles. I forgot that was what I wanted to do, and I remember that was something that my ex-husband and I, we were supposed to do it together. We were supposed to learn, and I remember I had the manual to get my permit. You know, I started studying. I bought a helmet. I had a pink motorcycle helmet with purple butterflies.
Nice.
Flying on it. And I was so excited. And then he started saying things like, well, you'll probably get a bite before I do, you know, because I can't do it. And it just turned into a bad taste in my mouth. Like I didn't want to do it. Because he manipulated the situation, because it was something I was really excited about. I was really happy about it. And that was another thing that he took and he twisted it. But I started thinking about it again this week. I'm putting that back on my list.
Yeah, Tia.
I don't know where a Lamborghini is going to come from. I don't know where a motorcycle. And I want a Honda Sport Bike, black. I just.
There you go. Just be careful.
Wheels.
Yes.
Just be careful.
Can be anything you want it to be. It can be, and you know what? Even if I don't do it, it's beautiful to think about. It's fun to think about. It makes me feel good. It makes me laugh. You don't have to be in a bubble where you're crying and feeling bad. I think there are times where you need to shed your tears, but you move through it. And again, there's always a next, whatever you want it to be, however long it takes you to get there. It's okay. So, JD, I want to thank you so much for being here with
You're
us
welcome.
tonight. This was just amazing. I really appreciate your voice and letting men hear and see that they do have a next because you stepped into your next. And I do want to give you the final word on tonight. We're speaking to our Love Bay family around the globe, but tonight we want to remember the men. So I'm going to ask you, what would you leave our Love Bay family with on tonight?
Oh, this has been absolutely enjoyable, and I'll be happy to do it again. If you want me to come back before October, just let me know. But anyhow, I will leave you with this because folks have, and again, this is on the social media stuff, right? Some will say, move on, move on, move forward. My message to the men that are listening is that, and even to the women, it's okay to look back. People say move forward, don't look back, don't look back. You're dwelling on it, you're hung up on it. It's like, no, I'm not hung up on it. It's okay to look back, to recognize how far you've come. And whether it's one step, two steps, whatever it is, look and applaud yourself for the progress that you are making. I remember when I had to force myself, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, I had to force myself long enough to put the beer bottle down to get back into the gym, because I was self-medicating a little too much and pushing myself to get back into the gym. Couldn't lift very much because I wasn't very strong at the time because I had lost so much darn weight, but just the baby steps, recognizing that, doing something that you can feel good about yourself at the end of the day. And so it's okay to look back to see how far you've come. And the closing thought would be to your next point, Evangelist, is he will put you where he wants you to be.
Yes.
So he didn't want me in that marriage anymore. And he had to physically slap me across the face and put me where he wanted me to be. This has been tremendous, and I've enjoyed this. So thank you.
So thank you so much, JD. I appreciate you being here. I'm already looking forward to the next time, and it probably will be before October. We're going to keep October, but
yeah, October.
Not doing here before that. That would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Love
JD.
Bay. If you want to catch up on previous
You're
episodes
welcome.
from our program, you can visit our YouTube channel, Suffering in Silence DV. We thank you so much for joining Suffering in Silence with Evangelist Tia on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. And JD, before we go, tell us again where we can get your book, The Third Gift.
Perfect. And again, thank you. So if people want a signed copy, they flat fee at $25. They can Venmo me at The Third Gift, or it's available on Amazon, Walmart, Target, all your major online retailers. There's an audiobook, ebook. And the audiobook, I narrated that myself. And again, I'd reiterate that any of the proceeds from the sale of the book are going to support several different nonprofits. So trying to do some good with an awful situation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Love Bay, thank you for being here. Remember that we are rising out of the ashes together. Have a good evening.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
See ya.